Welcome to No Permission Necessary, the show where we rewrite the rules and say the things that most people won't. No Permission Necessary empowers our listeners to thrive in every aspect of life where mental wellness, professional success, and authentic living seamlessly coexist. Let's dismantle that outdated belief that success requires sacrificing our own well-being. I'm Molly Bierman, partner of Yes Family Consulting.
And I'm Jill Griffin, founder of Inspire Recovery in Connecticut and co-founder and CEO of Waterview Behavioral Health. And today I'm stepping into the hot seat to share my story from starting a business with 6 clients and 0 plan and, everything before and after that. So I'm pulling back the curtain. Let's get into it.
I am so excited about this. I was actually looking at some of, the questions last night and getting prepared for this episode and really was like, this is going to be an authentic episode, really vulnerable, really in your face at times. I'm excited to kind of hear maybe things that I don't necessarily know too, I know this is for the listeners, but I feel like some of the questions you posed, can really give us a lot of insight into your story. So let's get into, for the listeners, I have a list of questions here and I'm going to kind of hop around to kind of keep Jill on her toes. And hopefully this is going to flow in a way that feels right for her to share parts of her that feel vulnerable.
Yeah.
So let's get into the first question. So what's one thing about your upbringing that shaped who you are today, but you've never shared publicly? That feels a little aggressive for the first question.
Oh boy. Well, I guess to give a little background, I grew up in Connecticut in a small town with 2 loving parents who are still married. So I had a lot of, and I shared this before, but my mother was in a leadership role when she went back into the workforce. My father was in a leadership role growing up. And I've always been very headstrong. In fact, I haven't really shared this publicly, but since having a daughter, my parents always say that she's just like me, except nice.
I've heard that.
That's the end of it. Yep. I think I just have always had this hard kind of edge around me. And what I think that translates into is I'm always brutally honest, even if people don't want to hear the truth. I'm always saying those things. But I was thinking about kind of my entrepreneurial journey, and my brother's also an entrepreneur. I remember, this is wild, but I remember in probably 4th or 5th grade, I used to go on the bus. I would create these baggies of Kool-Aid and sugar mix and sell them to my classmates on the bus. Okay. That was a side hustle I had when I was 11. So I feel like this is just in my blood. I had that entrepreneurial spirit from a young age. And I also was in leadership roles. I was one of those class presidents. I ran for class president. I was involved in Mothers Against Drunk Driving in high school, which is very ironic considering my journey. So yeah, I also think if, things that have shaped me that I haven't talked about publicly, it's what's public, right? I feel like this is much more public than I've shared my story.
Yeah.
And I don't want to really get into it, but I started drinking and smoking weed at age 12. So that
hustling
Kool-Aid and smoking weed. So I feel like that. And now that I have children that are getting towards that age, it's that is still a child.
That
very
is
much a child.
I was listening to a friend yesterday on a podcast, and she was talking about her child who's 12, going to be 13, and how she had started using substances at age 12. And she looks at her daughter and is like, that is truly a child, right? It is a different experience when you're on the other side. I will say, though, for some synergy here, is that I would do hair wraps at my pool club on kids for $5 a pop.
There you go. So yeah, we had it in us. We were always hustling.
We were hustling. We were
Yeah.
hustling. Okay. When did you realize you were different or maybe felt like not a part of? How did you handle it? I guess both both as a child and as an adult, because I feel like we kind of go through that in both spaces, right? We have that feeling that we may not totally fit in or we're not sure of ourselves, right, as a kid. And then also, I feel like we go through a second transition in young adulthood and then almost a
Totally.
third transition in adulthood, right? So, anyway, I'll let you answer.
So what comes up for me when you ask me that is, my well, going back to starting to use substances at age 12, right? Like I was in my first treatment center at 17. I got
Same.
my I got my letters accepting me into college in rehab, right? So I think in terms of what sets me apart, like I definitely was doing things in high school. I was very much a chameleon. Like I was an A student, I was a varsity athlete, I was all of those things front facing, but I had this double life where I was doing things that like high school students shouldn't have been doing. Okay? Like that's the bottom line. And so I remember the drug and alcohol counselor at the time is the person who in our school is the person who got me into treatment, and I ended up going into treatment at 17. And so like that right there kind of set me apart. And I think even using substances to begin with, like you feel a little bit like I don't feel right. I think I always say that substance use is a symptom, right? It's a symptom. It's you're trying to get relief in some way, right? And that works until it doesn't. So I think I was always feeling like a little bit different. I did get bullied when I was younger for being chubby. There was a lot of that. I remember there was a lot of mean girl stuff going on, called names, accused of things, like a lot of just stuff that I went through as a child. And then, like, fast forward to when I got sober at 24, I remember, like, here I am, a young adult. The people around me had now excelled. They've graduated college, they're in their careers. Here I am, a college dropout on probation, just getting sober, figuring out what the hell I'm going to do, you know?
Hmm.
So, like, I was certainly different then.
It's so interesting the parallels because I, on the other hand, and I know that there's women who are like, oh, cry me a river, like poor problem to have, right? But I was bullied down the other side for being like so thin, right? Like I couldn't keep weight on. I had, I couldn't fit into clothes. They never looked right on me. I always felt insecure about it. And I've talked to some friends too who have daughters that are built in that way, just really lean, and how sad it is to kind of hear their struggles, right? And
Yeah.
I body image
That's
is a
a
thing,
that's
right?
a
That's a
real
real
thing for a
thing.
woman. That's a real
Yes.
thing for a woman. In fact, like, there's statistics around how your looks kind of propel you in career, even in leadership. Like I think like if you look a certain way, like you're going to get farther. And that's like that's really like jarring because it's like I know I went through a period, and I don't know if this will come up, but like I went through a period after I had my kids where like I really struggled with weight again.
Hmm.
And in terms
Yeah,
of self-confidence, and that spills over into your confidence doing everything else in life.
totally.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah. I think that's a good point to just bring up because I feel like a lot of times we're not going back to those places, right? So this is good for us to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of what was and what shaped us because a lot of that stuff is really painful, right? So we're going to be kind of pulling back the curtain here
Yeah.
to go to some places that maybe we haven't even thought about, right? In a really long time.
And honestly, like I've done a lot of work around those things, and I can look back now and really see that all of those things it was almost like an initiation, right? That period of my life between 12 and 24 when I was completely lost to substances. My true essence was turned off. My authentic self was turned off. I was hiding in the shadows. I was doing things. I mean, it brought me to some dark places. Like, I'm not going to go through my whole story, but the reality is, like, I chose to live on the streets for a while. I slept in abandoned buildings with no electricity. I chose not to go home because I refused to get help. I, multiple arrests, just really grimy way of living that I I look back now and I am able to understand people in those similar situations now in such a different way and hold space and have compassion and really speak to them in a different way, because when you look at me now, nobody assumes that those are the things that I lived through or have been through, right? So like I do feel like it's a very big responsibility that I have now to share some of that, because it is, you are able to elevate past that. But it was an initiation. And then I had to get to work. When I turned 24 and I made the decision to give up drugs and alcohol, I had to get to work. And
So
that's what
what
I've
would
been
you
doing.
This is a really good segue into this question, which I love because it happened really organically. What title would you give that chapter of your life that led you to this?
Um, oh, ratchet shit. Like it was just like, I, there are people in my life that know this, right? Because I have this support system and I don't have shame around these things anymore. But that part of my life, I have lived another life at this point, because
Yeah,
that chapter
100%.
was an
100%.
entirely different
Life.
person
Yeah,
that lived that life.
totally.
And that person still lives in me, and I honor that person, because honestly, that person and those lessons that I learned and those experiences I've been through shape me into who I am today. And some of that grit I bring into my leadership roles now. I bring into my
Into your
business.
business. Yeah.
But I also know that I would never accept that type of behavior or stuff in my life today. Like, I'm worth more than that. And I don't think I had that belief then, which is why I was doing that
And
stuff.
you kind of got to be careful of that part of you because that part of you can get loud pretty quick, right? And really say, I can do this all on my own, right? Like I don't need a team, I don't need connection, right? Like there's
Yep.
this level of survival that happened during that portion of your life that really you did survive independently of a lot of interventions, right? And so it gives this kind of false sense of security almost that when you start to turn the page in your own life and you create and cultivate this beautiful, robust life that you
Mm-hmm.
have that I've been able to have a front row seat in since the day you got sober, essentially, and be able to watch you evolve from the sidelines for a period of time and then really take a front row in the last some odd years. And really knowing that it's still easy to say, I'm all set. Like when people push up on those soft,
Oh, I can go there.
those
I
parts.
can still go there. And I'm not talking about like I'm popping off and you're going to see me like out in the street fighting somebody, right? It's not going to get to that point, but there can still be that edge to me. And I think stepping into the professional role and really using that, honoring that self, that shadow self, that part of me that has that in me, and
Mm-hmm.
bringing it in so I can like use it as a confidence booster. But I have to tame that part of me sometimes. You know what's funny? I did the tarot card reading yesterday,
Yeah, which was
and
heavy, sounds
heavy,
like.
powerful. And so I did the tarot card reading, and one of the cards that came up was this woman and with a lion, which you all can't see, but I have a huge lion tattoo on me. I identify a lion as like very much my spirit animal. Like that is, I identify with that hard. And the woman was like, this kind of represents that you've tamed that lion, that like part of you that like was reckless and just didn't care. And you know and she doesn't know anything about me, right? And I just really resonated with that, because that's
Yeah,
what it is.
yeah,
That part of me is still there. And I think in the recovery space we always say like you're an arm length away from picking up
right.
again. And that's the reality, because if I go back to that mindset that I had during those years of I got this delusional thought that like everything's okay. The house was on fire. It had already burned down, and I was sleeping on top of it and thinking that that was just normal,
Yeah,
right?
the
So,
rubble,
yeah,
the ash.
it,
I'm
it
sleeping on
was
the ash. Yeah, yeah,
unwell,
yeah, yeah,
unwell
yeah,
in every sense.
yeah. Well, I mean, so what is, when we talk about all the risk and the rebellion that you had when you were young and the resilience that you've kind of carried through to be able to show up in spaces like this, right? Because this
Hmm.
is vulnerable, risk taking, the opposite of safe, the most extreme opposite of safe.
Yes.
What is a expectation that you feel like you've had to unlearn in order to get, to get here, in order to grow?
I think, I don't know if this answers the question, but what comes to mind is I deserve more. I don't know.
Mm.
Like I almost had to unlearn. I was accepting things in my life that were unacceptable. Whether that
Well,
was
keeping yourself
people,
small, it sounds like.
yeah, whether that was the people in my life, whether that was the things I was doing and participating in, whether that was what I thought I was capable of, like I really had to I had to let go of that because I there was a part of me on some level that believed this is all I'm going to get. This is all I
Hmm.
deserve. This is all I'm
Yeah.
worth. And
Hmm.
I think as that evidence showed up, like if I do the next right thing happens. And if I keep, honestly, what it's kind of like the North Star for me. Like if I look at what my North Star is, which is what is my authentic self, staying true to myself, and what's my purpose here?
Yeah.
What's God, the universe, like what's the grand plan here? Am I on track with that? And for me, it took me years to get in touch with that, but my gut very much tells me if I'm on that track or not. And I think I turned that off for a really long time when I was in that chapter of my life because I
Hmm.
knew the things I was doing was against how I was raised. It was against my values. It just, they were dangerous in many ways. And I turned that gut feeling off because I didn't want to hear it. I was doing it anyway. So now when I get that gut feeling, it's a pause. That's a moment to pause.
Yeah.
Are you still in line with your North Star? Are you still doing
Well,
what
what
you're
is
meant to be
that?
doing?
What is that purpose for you now? You know?
So I feel like I'm a teacher in a lot of ways. I feel like, and I think this is where I stepped into a leadership role from really early on. I like mentoring people. I like being able to share what I know with other people and kind of bring them up to where they belong, really. I think a lot of people have, whether that's imposter syndrome or self-esteem issues or whatever. I really have a good vision of people's like possibility, really.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think part of
Well,
my
I kind of think
purpose,
it goes back to that saying, I have a clear perspective on your life, you have a clear perspective on my life, but we don't have a clear perspective on our own, right? And how
yes,
powerful that is because you really can't see yourself clearly, right? The glasses are always a little blurry,
yes,
right? Yeah.
yeah. So it's too cliche to say like my purpose is to help people. Yeah, I'm a social worker. I'm an alcohol and drug counselor. I own businesses that are people businesses. They help people. That's the whole
Hmm.
goal, right? But my purpose is bigger than that. I really feel that everyone listening here may not have been their story may not be the same, but I don't care who you are. Every human being has challenges that they have to overcome to step into their best selves. And I feel like part of my purpose here is to share my story of redemption so that other people can take some courage from that to say, like, this is on me to change this because at the end of the day, no one's coming to save you.
No one is coming to save you.
Yeah.
Ain't that the truth?
You need to
Save
make a
yourself.
decision that you're
Yeah.
going to do something different.
Yeah. And leveling up in that way. I mean, we talk
Yeah.
about that a lot, right? And being around people that want that for you too, right? It's not that
Yeah.
nobody's coming to save you because you can have community, right? So just to be clear, like we have
But you have to
community,
want it. But you have to
right?
want it. That help and
I would even
support
go
will
as
be
far as you
there.
need to do it, right? There's a lot of people who want to do it. There's a lot of people who probably need to do it, but there's not a lot of people who actually do it,
You need
right?
to
And
do it. You need
so,
to do the
yeah,
work.
yeah.
And I will also say what just came up for me is that part of my life has really the risks and that I take now and the entrepreneurial space and leaving my job and all these things that I've encountered over the last 10-ish years. I know that like I would have to fall so far to go back to that place. It's almost
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the worst case scenario that could happen in my life today couldn't even touch the worst case scenario that I already lived. So I'm more willing to take risks because I'm never my bottom has raised up where I'm like, yeah, I could tolerate that. I used to sleep in cars, okay? So that's not going to bother me.
We talk about that a lot. We talk about that a lot. That the
Yeah.
level of bottom that one experiences based on the consequences of their life and their decisions or the decisions of others, right? I liked how uh, a friend of mine had said trauma is something that either happened to you that wasn't supposed to happen or something you didn't receive that you were supposed to,
Hmm.
essentially. And I love that because really every story is different, right? Your own story, your own consequences, your own pain, whatever it is. And you're absolutely right. For us to go back to those dark days, that's a far fall.
And it's
Okay.
not out of the realm of possibility if I stop doing the things that I need to do, right? I'm very
100%.
aware and humbled in that respect. However,
The risk
if
that we
I
take now. Yeah.
if my businesses went poof and they totally fell flat and failed tomorrow, it's like, all right, what's next? Because I'm still not back where I used to be.
Well,
I'm
you kind
still
of also need that as an entrepreneur too, right? Because we talk about, I think there's quite a bit of statistics on, starting businesses and then them failing, right? Or
yes.
not having the longevity or getting out of the infancy stage of business, right? And what does that look like? And, roles are going to reverse here on the next episode where Jill's going to interview me. But, some of the challenges that I faced in, starting a business and seeing it through to acquisition and all the things that I grappled with in that process, right? That there was a lot of risk that I had to take. And how do we create community around the risk so that way if there is the fall, there's also
We
the
have a net.
lesson.
Yeah, we have a
Yeah,
net too.
totally. What so I digress there. What is well, I feel like I know the answer to this, but tell us about a time that you walked away from something good because it wasn't right for you.
That would have to be my clinical director job.
Yeah, totally.
I mean,
Share with the
I,
listeners.
yeah. So I started in this industry. My first internship was at this agency and I loved it. I love doing crisis work. I love working with really sick people. That says a lot about me. I understand that, but I always tell people like I have so much respect for like kindergarten teachers or people who work with children. I say give me a psychotic substance using adult all day every day to work with. That probably scares you, but a room full of kids, I'm going to lose it. That's not going to work for me, right? So those are my people. Um I I really love doing that work and I was licensed pretty quickly after I graduated 10 years ago and was hired into a director role and I kind of moved up the ladder there and we opened up the first crisis residential private pay commercially insured program there. Really was excited about some of the things going on and I was promoted to clinical director. It was one of those things where I was really proud of that. And I remember at the time my husband had a trip to Italy that for work. And I was like, I'm definitely coming. Italy's like a bucket list. Still haven't been there. Spoiler alert, I ended up giving up my ticket to Italy because I felt a responsibility to this new program. And I was pregnant with my second during that opening and everything. I remember coming back from maternity leave earlier than I wanted to. My
Eight
choice to
weeks.
come
I
back.
remember talking to you.
My choice to come back. But I
Yeah.
distinctly remember taking phone calls a week after giving birth about staffing issues, and I felt that loyalty there. I feel like there was a big void because we just opened this program and now I'm out, and people still relied on me and people still needed me. And I kind of put my foot down around some of the things that I wanted. And that was really my first experience with no, this is my worth. This is what I'm asking for. And it was really asking for more responsibility. I wanted to do certain things and have certain conversations. And I remember telling my boss at the time, having that conversation with him. And he was, on the executive team ahead of me. And he looked at me and he said, I feel like you're trying to take my job. And it wasn't like a compliment. It wasn't a positive thing. It was very much in this like accusatory fashion. And I remember leaving his office that day and really sitting with that comment because it rubbed me the wrong way. One, because as a mentor now and as a supervisor of other staff, I want you to want my job. I want you to be better than me. I want you to be able to take what I'm
I
teaching
want you
you.
to outwork me. I mean, I
Yeah,
used to tell the
I
people that,
want I want you
yeah,
to want my job. I want you to
yeah,
take it from me.
take
Come
my
and
job,
try
right?
because it keeps me on my toes, right?
Yeah,
So,
100%.
and I also had to look at it and be like, wait a second. You're a vice president and you're answering phone calls 24/7. The balance is all off. You're getting calls in the middle of the night. I had 3 phones at one point, 2 work phones and my personal phone. I had a nervous system like reaction every time my phone rang. And so I
Of
remember
course.
saying, I actually don't want your job. And I left. I had 0 plan. I had 6 clients in my private practice at the time. I had this little rinky dink office. I had 6 clients. Um,
How old were your kids?
my kids were 5, let's see, 4 and 1.
Yeah.
My kids were 4 and 1. No plan, gave up this great salary with benefits to,
Yeah.
and thank God my husband was supportive of that and didn't think it was crazy, and I had him as a support, but I started moonlighting at the psychiatric hospital and like, I'm talking, you're going from like to like a quarter of my salary at that point, at best.
Yeah.
I just jumped out of the plane with no parachute. That's essentially what happened.
Yeah, but the reward, right? Like that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about risk. We're talking about things that don't make sense, that you don't have the crystal ball, right? Like we've,
It was a
you know,
leap of faith. It felt
yeah,
right. Going back
yeah,
to that gut feeling, I knew
yeah,
my gut was saying staying here doesn't feel right and I have to do something different. And I wasn't willing to wait to figure out what that next move was. I
totally.
just had to cut ties. And
Yeah,
I've said this before, but thank God I left because that was December 2019. I wouldn't have been able to leave once the world shut down with the pandemic. I don't believe.
yep.
So the timing worked out. And to be clear, Inspire Recovery now, we have a ton of staff. I have 13 offices. I have 18 clinicians. That was not the plan. That was not the vibe. That wasn't the plan. I didn't even, if you asked me then, I would have been like, no, I'm done managing people. I'm just going to work by myself. But what happened was I got really lonely working by
Hmm.
myself.
So if you were to kind of summarize that experience in one fell swoop, one sentence, what would it be?
A sentence.
Yeah, from agency to freedom, essentially. I just gave you a sentence, but
Take the leap of faith.
yeah.
That's I it was all a faith-based decision. Bottom line. I believed in myself more than my need to stay there. Like I just knew I would figure it out.
Yeah. And I remember having conversations with you, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna start a like small little practice. Maybe one clinician's gonna come work for me." And I was like, "That sounds great." Here we are.
And here we are. Here we are.
So, as far as the title to our podcast, we went through a lot of titles. We
A lot of
went through,
criticism from friends and family, might I add.
yeah, a lot of criticism, a lot of opinion.
A lot of opinion.
And why do you feel like the title speaks to us, to you? What does no permission necessary mean? And yeah, how do you feel like it aligns our journeys and our time to land here?
I feel like no permission necessary really speaks to not needing to ask to be your best self and to be your authentic self, right? Like we don't need permission to express whatever that looks like. And it's taken a really long time through this initiation and through this whole growth trajectory we've been on, both of us, since we've gotten sober, and then getting into this professional world, really growing into who we are, then becoming wives, then becoming mothers, like all of these roles and part of who we are, like our identity has shifted, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but our true essence and who we are authentically as people, that's still there despite those
The lion.
identities.
The
And yeah,
lion's
and so
still
I think
there.
it's like there's no permission necessary for us to have to show up like that. I'm not going to ask you if you're comfortable with who I am. I'm comfortable, and that's what
Oof.
matters. Bottom
That's
line.
hard for people, though. Let's talk about it. You know, like that is hard for people to say, I don't care about your opinion.
There's a lot of things when it comes to your healing and what's best for you. Other people's, speak for me. When it comes to my healing, what's best for me and my family, your opinion has no space here. Your opinion is not welcome. That doesn't mean I am an avid reader. I listen to podcasts. I consume information at a rate that is probably maniacal at this point. Like
Truly.
it really is. I absorb a lot of information. So it's not like I am not seeking opinions, but when you think that your opinion should be changing my direction in my life that I know is what's best for me, that's where we are going to have to definitely disagree.
I remember when I was coming up with the names for our kids, a lot of opinion. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I come from an opinionated family as is, which is, I think, where I probably get a lot of my strength, but also a lot of my defect.
Molly is unfiltered, you will find.
I am the unfiltered friend, but I feel like you are too. No?
I definitely am. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like that's why it works. But, you know, there was a lot of folks that wanted to give me opinion, which is interesting because I feel like sometimes there's like a little bit of a barrier for people. They feel a little intimidated to be able to share their opinion with me, which I don't love. I want people to feel in community with me. So it's something that I've actually felt like I've had to soften over these years, especially becoming a mom and like being introduced to new women that don't know me.
Yes. For
Uh,
sure. That is
in a lot of ways. That's like a whole
yes.
episode in and of
That's
itself.
we can
But
talk about that later because I have too
yeah.
much to say about that.
Yeah. And so, but people started giving their opinions on my kids' names. And I was like, guys, I love you. And there is no way that I'm changing the name based on how you feel about it. I mean,
Yeah.
I may not even change the name based on how Sam feels about it. Let's be honest.
I mean, I know that 1000%. I'm not sure if Sam knows that 100%, but
Oh, he does. Oh, he does.
it's yeah.
We came to common ground,
Molly
but it
saying
was
something?
a battle. It
Yeah.
was a battle to the very end for that kid who came out and still was unnamed for hours, you know? So, anyway, I can relate to where I can digest somebody's opinion and really think about it and how it applies to my life, and then also where it's not necessary. Little play
Yeah.
on NPN
Yeah.
over here.
Absolutely.
So, gosh, so many good questions. Who do you fight for when no one is watching?
I think the cliche and expected answer is my children, but I will say that I strongly feel that the people I fight for when no one's watching are the ones who are looked at as trash. And
Totally. The underdog. Yeah.
what I mean by that is, and I can tell how a person is when we're in a city somewhere and I'm
Yeah.
walking with them and we see that person on the street, dirty clothes, sleeping on cardboard, maybe talking to themselves, and how they act or what they say. Those are the people that I fight for. And I'm not saying, I'm saying the addicts, the alcoholics, the people who have who have severe trauma, the people that don't know how to get better, and they
And the
are,
people that fought for our country, like talk about the
oh,
veterans, you know?
oh,
Yeah.
yes. All these forgotten people that we just kind of step over, step aside, walk on the other side of the street, pretend it's not a problem. That's
Mhm.
really the people I'm fighting for, because if we're being honest, that was me. And
Mhm.
I show up in a different way now. People don't know that. But if I'm walking with somebody and they're going to make comments about these people, what they don't realize is you're talking about me. So, and how would
God,
you have
I
looked how
vividly,
how would you have looked at me
yeah.
when I was on the streets like that? So I just have probably an irrational, delusional belief, but I do believe that there is a world where we can solve this problem and help these people in a more humane way, right? Now, do we all have choices? Yes. Are some of those people never going to choose to put down drugs and alcohol, or never choose to go live in a home? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean, I mean, I can remember going to New York City with my kids, and even now, if we see somebody who's panhandling, my kids always ask to give them money, because I've always told them, I don't care what people look like, you treat them with dignity and respect. The only way that I would move away from a person in a street is if they are being aggressive or violent in some way.
I
Otherwise, if
remember.
you smell, if you look weird, if you're talking weird, I'm still going to say hi and smile at you, because I might be the only person that smiles at you today.
Mm, ain't that the truth?
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting off when I was still living in Connecticut, and I remember getting off at exit, I don't know what it was. Whatever, like the North Haven exit, or like between North Haven and New Haven exit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a really like popular panhandle spot, right? And I remember getting off the exit one day and it was like, oh my God, I went to high school with that kid, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward a couple weeks later, I got off the same exit and it was another kid I went to high school with. And I remember sitting there, first of all, it brought me back to a place where I used to admire certain kids, right? Or like the popular kids, or the
Yep.
kids who had gone through puberty quicker, or like were more attractive quicker, or like stayed in the awkward phase for less time, whatever it was, right? And one of these kids was very much like a social guy, right? He played sports, he had friends, he, partied, he, people liked him, he had a lot of girlfriends, whatever it was. And I remember saying to myself, like, you never know what somebody's story is going to look like, right? And
Yeah.
what challenges they're going to face. And, the odds of two people that I went to school with, look, I didn't go to a huge school, but nonetheless, right? There is this challenge everywhere. And if people aren't recognizing that, someone, whether you want to admit
We all know
someone or
someone.
not,
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I think that's just so important. And I love that, yes, your kids matter. And in order for our kids to be raised in a more fruitful world, these things need to be paid attention to.
We need to be treating people as humans. And I think sometimes
Period. No matter what they
we,
did.
no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, this goes into legacy. Let's talk a little bit about your future legacy, Jill. If you're, well, it's a little morbid. Okay, if your life were to come to an end tomorrow,
Mhm.
what unfinished work do you feel like would either haunt you or feel undone? I like that word better. Feel undone.
Whew. Let's hope today's not my last day on earth. But you never know.
You never know.
I feel like I am stepping into a space now where there's a possibility for more impact. I feel like that's what's left undone. I think that the circle of influence that I have right now, that starts with my family, then it goes to my staff, my partners, then it goes to all the clients that we serve. It's a pretty big circle of influence, and also the community that those clients live in too, right? Like it trickles out.
Sure.
I think there's a different conversation that I can be having on a larger level for people who feel like, well, how do I get to this next level? Well, how do I step into my authentic self? Well, how do I live in joy, even though I've been through these really hard things and no one's going to accept me because I was XYZ in my past?
Mhm.
Um, I think now's the time to start those conversations. I think that legacy of impact, that word's really big in my mind right now because feel like it implies a larger footprint. Um, and I would like to see that happen in women. I think in the age of social media, the statistics around, female teenagers and their mental health since the iPhone came out and the body image issues, the suicide rates, that is heartbreaking to think a child wants to end their life. That is supposed to be the most joyful time in your life where you're just unburdened, right? And this is coming from someone who at 12 started using. So clearly I had issues, but the reality is we need to be holding everyone up. And I think in order to hold those kids up, where are the mothers at? And I'm not blaming them when I say that, but I'm saying where's their headspace? Did they feel like empowered to be able to deal with this? Did they feel empowered enough to hand down strong messages to their daughters? We need to lift each other up so that we can be, managing these things because the mental health crisis is real right now.
So what do you tell your daughter that you wish you were told?
That she
As
is
a kid.
enough, period. You are enough. You don't have to excel in school, sports. You don't have to do all of the things. You don't even have to be perfect. I expect you to make mistakes, but you are enough, even with the mistakes you're going to make. And I love you no matter what. I think we have to create a safe space for people to make mistakes and not saying no consequence. There's consequences, right? But I think there's a difference between making people feel like they are bad people for making mistakes and that there's no redemption from that.
Well, what do you think people get wrong about you? And what's the actual truth? Because me looking at you as your friend, right? And you saying that, like, your daughter's enough and she doesn't need to do all the things and all that sort of good stuff. I would say that if people looked at you, they would say, there's no way Jill says that to her kids because she's a high achiever. She expects a lot from people, in a good way. So what do you feel like people get wrong about you? And what do you feel like is the truth that really aligns with parenthood, business, friendship, all the things?
Well, before I answer that, I will say that I do fall into that trap because it's a real thing to vicariously live through your child. Like my kids play sports now.
My
I am
daughter's
that
10
mom.
months old. I'm already researching dance studios.
Yeah, I am that mom on the sideline where it might be a bit much. Okay.
I did see that
will
picture.
yeah, I will give feedback to my kids after and I'll ask if they want to hear it. But I also let my daughter especially know that listen, if you have the motivation and the desire to be great, I will be there with you, right there with you, and I will get you to where you need to go and I will support that. But I'm not dragging you along to be great. And what I mean by that is if she decides tomorrow she doesn't want to play XYZ sport, I may have a conversation with her about it, but I'm not dragging her, even if I think she could be great at it. Like there has to be some sort of inner motivation with that. And I do have to tame my achievement and what I'm internally motivated for and realize that not everybody has those same goals and wants and like I like achieving. I like doing things. I'm always doing something. I'm like a motor. That like excites me, right? Like I like doing that. I think what people get wrong about me, and this has come up a lot lately when I kind of go into all the things that I'm doing. This has come out a lot with the podcast. I'm starting a podcast. Jesus, what else are you doing? Like you're doing another thing? Like this is what people. And so I think there's this misconception that I'm working 80 hours a week. I don't go to bed until midnight. I'm working on the weekends.
Totally.
Here's the reality. Let's be real. when I leave the office, unless there is a deadline of some sort, which is very rare, I'm with my kids and my family. That doesn't mean I might not send an email out or have a phone call with somebody, but I'm pretty much off duty. And I don't think about work like that. I don't obsess about it. I have to let it go because I have to have the space to pick it up again the next day. That's like an energy drain. I
And
am
to
very,
create, right? That's a lot of what
yeah,
we talked about too. Like you
I
need
need
the space
space
away
to
from the
create.
monotony to be able to create. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
on the weekends, I'm doing kid stuff. I'm resting. I'm taking naps. I'm working out. I'm doing
Lots
the
of
things that I want
naps
to do.
over here.
I love a nap, so and let me be clear, my travel and my vacations, I take those very seriously. I love to travel. So I'm not working. I just have to keep, when I add something, I'm shifting priorities, right? Like who can I
Totally.
hand off some responsibilities to? Who can I level up into a different leadership role there? Like I need
And
to
how
hand
are
that
you
off.
shaping your mid-level management in that way, right?
Exactly.
So that's a episode in and of itself, and we're going to talk to some really wonderful entrepreneur females and
Hmm.
moms and people who do it all, right? And how you shape your mid-level management to be able to show up when you need to be able to create, whether that be
Yeah.
experience, whether that be with your kids, whether that be in the dark moments where you can't show up as your best self, right?
Yeah.
So I do think, I mean, not that you need my
I
um
don't need permission, Molly.
yeah, validation is what I was looking for. That people get that wrong about you, but they do, because I've had friends be like, God, Jill travels like 6 weeks out of the year. She's always on vacation. Like, how does she handle this and work and kids? And yeah,
Happily. Honestly, I mean, not to say that there's not moments where I'm like super stressed, right? I don't want to give that illusion that I'm just like, la, 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 this is
yeah.
awesome. No, there's like stressful moments, but I also am a very ritualized person. I've been up since 4:20 this morning. I worked out. This is my 5 days a week. I'm up between 4 and 5 every day. I'm working out. I'm journaling. I'm meditating. I'm having some quiet conversation with the universe and just sitting of what's next, right? I'm texting out my gratitude list. I'm doing all the things. That's every morning. That's if I'm on vacation or I'm home. I'm doing that.
True.
So I am filling my cup before I'm giving myself to anything else around me. And I think that those structures that I have in place keeps me kind of level headed and so I don't get burnt out. I don't identify with burnout anymore. I'm not, because I really watch my energy. I really watch my energy management. And if I'm not feeling something that day, something's got to move. Something's got to give.
I mean, such an important conversation,
Yeah.
really, because I think there's a lot of shame and guilt, right? Around how much do we give our kids? How much do we give work? How much do we give our husbands? How much do we give our friends, right? So,
Can that be my permission slip?
yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get into it. I have one more question, then we'll give the permission slip
Okay.
to our listeners. So, I want to make the last one a good one. You've made it your mission to give women a voice in leadership. When did you realize yours wasn't being heard, and what do you hope for the listeners to take away as far as how to show up in leadership?
The memory that just came to me is so
Oh,
wild. So my first job in recovery was a front desk position at this assisted living place. So I'm like the front desk person, all these old people, so cute. And I would answer the phone. Well, little did I know that they were recording, when they say like recording for quality
yeah.
assurance, they were like recording my phone calls. I get called into the office and I don't know what his role was, the manager, director, I don't know.
Sure.
He's like, so we have to have a conversation because the way that you're talking, like your voice it's just not,
Your voice.
it's just not welcoming, inviting. I don't know if you can like bring up, like they wanted me to talk like this, and that's not me. You're not going to get that from me. I don't know. That's probably never going to happen. So like that, that ratchet part of me wanted to really, but I had to sit there and take it and smile and nod and say, okay. I left there in tears, right?
Oh.
And it doesn't sound like that. That was I had a whole meltdown about how am I going to change my voice? But I, I think it's one of those moments, right? Where I don't know if I realized it at the time, but I can look back at that moment and be like, no, that's when I didn't feel like I had the ability to say, take me or
This is who
leave
I,
me. This is
right.
who I
Who
am.
I am. Yeah.
I do every other aspect of this job. And is somebody complaining about my voice, or are you just listening to it on the thing and you want it to be more sing-songy? Like, that's not going to happen. I don't talk like that. And and even at that point, I'm not going to fit into whatever mold you're trying to put me in because I'm who I am. I'm very
Yeah.
secure in that. We've had conversations like, I am who I am, like it or love it. This is, or hate it. I'm who I
Or
am.
hate it, and we'll be okay.
Yeah. That doesn't mean that there's not parts that you can get better, like you said, soften certain areas, right?
Hmm.
But I love all parts of me now. And I know, and I think even in that moment, I realized that I had a voice. I just didn't know how to use it yet. And so when I work with women in leadership, because I just think it happens with women more. We're told to be quiet. We're kind of our asks, our wants, our needs are minimized in different kind of subtle ways. And I hate to say that, but I do think that's the truth. And I don't mind speaking up. I'm going to be speaking up. I'll say something. And so I think really modeling that for people and then showing women how to use their voice in a positive way so they can be heard. Because you don't want to be screaming and angry, and you have to use your voice in a way that it's going to be received too.
So if you could can that in a concise way to give our listeners their permission slip, because we know that we don't need to ask for permission, but
Mm-hmm.
this is our takeaway. What would your permission slip be?
My permission slip would probably be more foundational. It would be my permission slip is to fill your own cup first. And why I say that is it is really hard to get in touch with what your authentic self is or what you need or what you're trying to even say or what those frustrations are. If you're not having that time to fill your cup, be in quiet. Do the things that make you feel whole. Dance, work out, read a book, go for a walk. There's too many women, especially mothers, who are always feeling like they have to be doing something to be productive and to be worthy. They have to always be doing something, and that is not the case. You need to be able to sit and slow down and be quiet and kind of listen to what your own body's telling you, right? So I always look at, filling your own cup first. We really need to be pouring into a vase that's overflowing onto our children, our staff, our friends,
Mm.
our family. But if you can't pour from an empty cup, you have to be overflowing. So you have to fill yourself up first. That would be my permission slip, because I think that it all starts there. Because if you're going to stay in these same, be in this rat race and always doing something and exhausted all the time, you're not even going to know the potential your authentic self has.
So true. Well, this is all the time we have today. We have so many more questions we can ask Jill, which we'll get into in a later episode. But we want to thank you for listening. If you've been holding back your voice, your leadership, or your truth, I hope this gave you permission to stop waiting, because the truth is you never needed it. Thanks for listening to No Permission Necessary. Like us, follow us on Instagram, leave us a review, send it to your friends, and we hope you enjoyed this episode.
Next time on No Permission Necessary, I'm going to be interviewing Molly so we can learn all about her grit and determination to become the leader, mother, wife, and friend that she is today. So join us
Thanks,
next time.
guys.